Hey, everybody, we're live here and we've got Jeff Brown, and I am so excited to have Jeff here today. Jeff comes to us from the UK and he's a photographer, mentor, and business coach, and he's mastered using LinkedIn for his business. I met Jeff, man, it was probably 3 years ago. You and I
Yeah,
interacted
that's
with
right.
each other and all that stuff. And he's a brilliant person, brilliant mind. He always has little nuggets of gold and information anytime I talk to him and pick his brain. I'm thrilled to have Jeff here to talk business today and various parts of business. And specifically, like, I want to talk some mindset and LinkedIn with you, because I know that's something you're like very passionate about. So thanks, Jeff, for being on here today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And funny enough, today I just actually launched my new mindset book. It actually went live today, so it was. I didn't know whether I'd have it out in time to talk about it by the
Then
time we were doing
perfect
the
timing
podcast.
because we're
So
going to talk about
perfect timing.
mindset. That's awesome. So before we get into the meat of what I want to talk about with you and just like kind of interact and chat about is tell us a little bit about your background, what got you into photography, what led you where you are today, because I know you have quite the history with photography.
Yeah. So I've always been self-employed. Believe it or not, my first self-employed business was at 14-year-old when I used to make fishing flies for fishing shops. And I started up under the Prince's Trust grant with a grant from the then Prince Charles. And I had that business until I was 26. And then we went our separate ways, me and my business partner, and I joined the military, joined the Royal Navy. And when I was in the Royal Navy, I joined as an engineer to start with, and then realized you could actually be a photographer in the military. So I sideways entry, went into the photography branch and became a military photographer. And fast forward 9 years from that, I went on to leave the military, and start my own photography business. So I had my first photography business in 2004, shot over 750 weddings, did about 4,000 boudoir, um, hundreds of nursery schools. My ex-business partner still has that business going. And we also had a commercial photography business. And then in 2015, I stupidly bought a food pub, which I thought would be a fantastic wedding venue, which would work really well for the wedding photography side and would have the venue as well. Plowed a load of money into it, bought the lease, then spent about £120,000 on redecorating the place and completely transforming it. And within 12 months, that had completely failed. One of the biggest failures I've ever had in my life, which led to my breakdown and attempted suicide. Hence why I've written this book about mindset and sharing part of my journey. And it took me in a completely different direction into mentoring and working with photographers on the business side of things. And then over the years, I've appeared on hundreds and hundreds of photography podcasts and webinars. I'm an ambassador for OM System, Olympus Cameras. I'm president of the BIPP, which is the British Institute of Professional Photography. And I work with photographers in about 20, 25 countries around the world.
Wow, man, what a story. And there's nothing that can teach us more about business than to fail in business. I've learned
Totally,
that the hard
totally.
way as well, so it's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just how you recover from that failure sometimes is the hard part, right? But I'm glad that you didn't go down the negative road and you found some positive in it and worked your way back into that and all that stuff. But I definitely want to talk about mindset. But before we go there, one of my first interactions with you, and it's where I started going down the road of doing anything when it came to LinkedIn. I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, and is LinkedIn still working? What is working well with LinkedIn? What is not working well with LinkedIn? I actually have a question here from one of our group members, Tony Knight, who asked two questions, and we can dive into these as part of it. What's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best type of post for LinkedIn? And is it still words and images, or is video and even GIFs catching up to like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok? And then the other question he had is it best to post on your business page and then cross promote it to your personal, or is it better to post it on your personal then cross promote it onto your business? So I know that's several
Yeah,
things that we're going to talk about, but let's
yeah.
start with like talk about like where's LinkedIn? Where's it going? I know like post, engage, and connect is a big buzz kind of words and stuff that I've heard. I want to hear your take on that kind of stuff.
Well, here's a couple of stats. So I'm busy at the now. I've got Mindset book out the way, and that one's published. I'm busy rewriting my LinkedIn book. And it's going to be my fourth edition of this LinkedIn book. So my photographer's missing link LinkedIn book. It's called The Photographer's Missing Link. That's currently out there as the third edition. Now, as I'm rewriting this, I looked at my when I'd written that, and I wrote that book in January 2020. So in January 2020, my book is saying that LinkedIn had 850 million users. LinkedIn now has over 1 billion. So it's exceeded the 1 billion
Wow.
mark. So that's fantastic. Now, this is the interesting bit. 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, I had 30,000 people, because I say it in the book, and I share a picture of my profile. Here I am, I've got 30,000 organic followers from LinkedIn. Fast forward to today, I now have nearly 64,000.
Oh wow.
So without spending any money on ads. Now look at that growth in comparison to like my Facebook profile on my Facebook business page, where it's really hard to get interaction and it's really hard to get growth. Without, as you know, chucking money at Facebook ads and boosting stuff and getting stuff out there. So LinkedIn is still extremely powerful. It still is massively underused by photographers. And that even though it's now got 1 billion users, believe it or not, there is still just over 1% of those 1 billion people on the platform creating content. So what you see in that newsfeed scroll is created by only 1% of those users. Whereas Instagram and Facebook, as we all know, we're fighting to get
Yeah,
our
yeah, you're
content out
fighting to
there and
get you're
fighting to get
fighting to
our
get to the
content
top.
saved. Yeah, yeah,
Right. Now, so curious on the LinkedIn side of things. I know it's the 1%, but like when I go on LinkedIn, I mean, and maybe it's just the people that I'm following or whatever it's going, I just feel like, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a mindset thing. I feel like it's just a
yeah,
bunch of garbage, that I just see over and over again. And the content is just not very helpful, at least for me. And it's just like, how do you sift through the weeds of what the like I feel is garbage? Because I know it's very successful. And when I was
yeah,
actually focusing on LinkedIn, I was getting clients when I was like focused on doing headshots and stuff like that. It took work, but it
yeah,
was free work. It was just me doing
yeah.
the work as opposed to, and you know me well enough to know that majority of where I get my clients is off of Facebook and Instagram, but it's paying for ads and stuff.
Mhm.
And so it's a different kind of work, but it's a
Yeah.
monetary work. But how do you sift through and how do you stand out from the crowd when it comes to that kind of stuff where it's just like the one percenters are putting out a bunch of stuff and it's just like, how do you stand out from that?
I think you've just knocked it on the head. I think that because there is so much crap out there, and I think a lot of people think, well, I've got to create a post for LinkedIn. I'll just put anything out there. They're not very conscious. Now, I have this saying that visibility is credibility. The more visible you become, the more credible you become. So visibility leads to credibility. Credibility leads to authority, because the more credible you become, the more authority you have. And when you have more authority, more opportunity comes your way in all different sorts of forms. So not just customers, opportunities and lots of other stuff. You can write for magazines, appear on podcasts, get ambassadorships and affiliates, and loads and loads of good stuff happens. But you've got to be out there. But you're not putting yourself out there creating content for the sake of content. You've got to create content that your followers love, that is inspirational. And he's the one that a lot of people forget about on LinkedIn. It's humorous, right? Inspirational, humorous content, authentic content, interesting content, um, personal content, and also business content as well. Now, funny enough, I had a guy join my program a couple of weeks ago, and he got in contact with me, and he messaged me and he says, Jeff, I want to book one of these 30-minute consultation calls with you. So he booked the consultation call. We jumped on a call together, chatting, and he says, I've been following you for about 6 months. He says, I know you know your stuff because I read your content. I've read one of your books. I know you really know your stuff. He says, but do you know what? prompted me to book a call with you today. And I went, what? He says, you did a post last week about Nestle's discontinuing the breakaway chocolate bar biscuit, right? After 50 years. And I sort of like took the Mickey out of it and I said,
Has
this
nothing to do with
biscuit
photography. It's about a biscuit.
nothing to do with photography. And I said, this biscuit was created 50 years ago. So was I, so the biscuit's been around for 53 years, so that. And I says, whereas the biscuits got slimmer, I've I've got chunkier. So we've reversed roles. But I just had a bit of humor, added a bit of humor. Then at the end asked, what biscuits can you bring from your childhood memories? And he said that post made me laugh. And he said it made me see, the Jeff behind the business. And he says, and I thought, if I wanted to get mentored by anybody, I want somebody who doesn't take himself too seriously. So it is really important to show that authentic and personal side. And the other side of things, and this will probably answer a couple of Tony's questions. And hi, Tony, because I know Tony and I. So hope you're doing well,
Tony's
Tony.
awesome. I love Tony. He's a good
He's a
friend.
lovely guy, isn't he? A lovely guy. And what I tend to do is a bit of a mix. So if I put a businessy type post out, or for me, like a top tip advice post, I'll not get a lot of comments on it. It'll get a lot of views. So it might get 10,000 views or like 15,000 views. Because remember, I've got 60 odd thousand
Yeah.
people following it. So it might get a lot of views, but it might not get a lot of engagement, as in comments. Because if I'm talking about pricing for your business, or people aren't going to say, oh, Jeff, yeah, I'm struggling with my pricing. I don't know what to charge. I believe I should charge more. They're not going to comment that in the news feed, because other people's going to see that comment. Or they go, oh, my business is really crap at the moment, Jeff. People aren't going to say that. But the views are the important bit, because 15,000 people have seen that. 15,000 people have opened that post and have read it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them might not have engaged on it, but they've read it. So then the next day I put up a post that might be personal, and I'll try and tie something in with that post into my business. So an example of last week's one, I did a post last week, which was a photograph of me and my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, and I took her to see Judas Priest in concert. So I used to be,
Hey,
I
that's
used to
some
be into
old
rock
school
music.
stuff there, man.
Well, yeah, it was Judas Priest, Saxon, and Uriah Heep. She loves our heavy metal music. I was into exactly the same music at 16, and I actually had hair then. You believe it or not, I had hair down to here. But so I did that post, and I put some photographs of me and my daughter Uriah up, and I shared some pictures from the concert, and I said, musicians are very much like photographers. They do something which is driven by passion. And I says, we went to see these three bands that between them had over 150 years worth of experience in touring and doing what they do. And I says, these people are driven by a passion. And even though Rob Halford from Judas Priest is 76-year-old or something, he has no desire to retire because he loves what he does. And I said, how do you feel about that? And loads of people were commenting on that. That had nothing to do with photography. But I managed to,
Right.
people would open and comment on that because it was something different. And it was, it wasn't trying to sell anything. So that's what you do. Do a businessy post, do a personal post, do a businessy post, do a personal post. And the reason being is, if people start engaging with that personal post, which they're more likely to do than if you just put a headshot picture up or you just put a top tip up. When they engage and they comment and they like that, they by sort of association with the algorithm, they're saying to LinkedIn, I love that. Can I see more of Jeff's stuff? Every time you can draw a comment out of somebody, the algorithm thinks, oh, they've liked this. Next time you post, we'll show them that.
Okay.
So if the next day it's a business tip, if they don't advise on it, they're still seeing it if they don't comment on it. And then the next day I might do another personal post. So keep mixing that up. And people will get to know who you are. And remember that growing your following, becoming more likable, it's that becoming known, liked, and trusted. And to be liked, you've got to be authentic, you've got to be real, and you've got to be yourself. And to be trusted, you shouldn't be trying to sell to people all the time. People won't trust you if all you're trying to do is get money out of them.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing that people miss the mark, especially in LinkedIn. I think it's across the board. I think photographers, when they're selling a lot, or when they're posting, hey, we're offering this or we're doing that, and that's the majority of what they're doing, it you know, for me as a viewer, and I know marketing a little bit better than most because I've learned through over time, but um, and I used to be one of those guys that's like, I only time I post is like, hey, I got a special offer, or hey, you want to book a
Yeah.
session, or hey, whatever. But it's like those just get lost and people just you just become salesy. So I love that you said that. And before you even said it, you spent however long talking about all these other things that had nothing to do with sales, you know, and I think that's a big thing that people need to understand when it comes to anything, not just LinkedIn. Your posting shouldn't be special offers all the time and sales all the time and all that
Mm.
kind of stuff, right?
Well,
So
funny enough, today I've just done a post about the new book, so I'll put that out there. And that I would say is probably only what we're into like March now, mid-March. That's probably about my second salesy type of post I've done this year. So I'll be lucky if I do a sales post maybe 5 to 6 times in a year. But by not selling, I actually sell better.
no,
You know,
totally. Like it's like
because
you said, it's like
people know what I do.
you're
Yeah.
selling you by just talking about you and being who you are
Totally.
and just,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
and
people
and
want to
and I don't
engage in
need
that.
to repeatedly tell people what I do because they can look at my profile and see what I do,
Right.
and they can see how qualified I am for what I do by the content I put out there. So I don't have to say, come and book me and come on board my program and buy this and buy that. I just don't do
Awesome.
it, and I'm a crap salesman anyway. I'm British. British people aren't very good at selling. Yeah.
So let's go to the questions that Tony has here. Like he asked the question, like, what type of posts on LinkedIn? I mean, I know you hit some of these type of things, but his specific question is more like on the lines of, do images, you know, sell, videos sell, gifts sell? Like, what should we be posting? Because for me, it's like if you just do words, kind of gets lost in the weeds. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
articles, is are articles something that you should be posting on LinkedIn? What is that? What kind of things are working best?
So articles don't get a lot of engagement. Um, Image posts do. So I would say always do an image post and then tell a story behind the image post. So think who, what, where, when, why. Tell a story. The headline's the key bit. And also think about your image layout. Remember, one single image takes up more real estate, more space than multiple images. So be aware of the images that you put in when you're creating that post. But the next most important thing to the image is the headline, because the headline will ultimately be the few words and then the see more bit. Now, you want people to click that see more. So by creating a really good headline, even if the image isn't strong, people might see the headline and go, oh, what's this about? So be very, and you just have to look at, some of the sort of stuff that goes on like Google News. A lot of it is like clickbait, but it sparks your interest. Now, what you don't want to do is have a clickbait type of headline like they often do on Google News, that when you click on it, it's completely
It's not even what you're
it's
talking
really,
about.
they say, oh, World War III is going to start, and then they'll say, if this potentially happens, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So don't make it like that, but get people really interested. I usually say, like, make a statement or ask a question or create what I call a wonder headline or a mystery headline. So it could be something like, when I walked into this room, I didn't believe this was going to happen. Or when I walked into the room, I did, and then you tab down a couple of lines and then start reading the content, because people think, oh, I wonder what happened when Jeff actually walked into the room. So then tell the story. And then at the end of the story, whenever you've done your post, always ask a question. Every single post I put out there, I always ask a question, because that is the last thing that people read. And if you ask a question, more often than not, those people will come back and answer that. And remember, LinkedIn is a comments driven platform. It's not like Instagram. It's not a thumbs up platform. It's a platform driven by discussion.
Okay.
So a comment is much more valuable than a load of likes. You want to get
Okay.
people commenting.
So then that leads into kind of the next question. Now you've made that post. Should you be making that post on your business page and then cross promoting it to your personal, or personal to your business?
So what I would never do is share any posts either way. So don't share a business post onto your personal page, and don't share a personal post onto your business page. Best way to do this, Tony, is to create your post as a personal post on your own personal feed. So you post that out. So say, for instance, you do that post Monday. Don't do anything with it. post it on Monday, let it go. Then the following Monday, open that post up, copy the post in its entirety, then open up your business page and post it onto there with the image,
Okay.
right? So why do you do that? Well, first of all, with LinkedIn puts the least value on shares, as in for organic reach. So if you share somebody else's content, for the person whose content has been shared, it's a big tick. But for the sharer, it doesn't get anything, because LinkedIn wants more authentic, real content. It doesn't want people just sharing loads and loads of stuff. It wants people creating content. And the other thing is, if you put that post out in your newsfeed last Monday, it might just be starting to drop off now. And if you've got a company page, you just copy that post over onto your company page. A week later, you've revitalized it, you've lifted it up again, you've got a bit more visibility without going through the effort of having to try and create fresh content just for your company page. Obviously, if the post's a personal post, then don't put it on your company page, right? So your company page might be products, services, special offers, anything that is businessy. So like today's post that I've done about my book, I will share onto my company page next week because it's business related. But my Judas Priest one, I don't put that on my business page.
So you don't, it's okay to cross promote things and repurpose posts within those two
Oh,
different
totally,
realms.
totally.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
good, solid advice that
And
I had no
another
idea.
thing to do, is I use LinkedIn. So obviously I use LinkedIn a lot, but I also post a lot now to my Facebook personal page using the Facebook professional mode, as opposed to using my Facebook business page. So my personal page is switched on with Facebook professional mode, which gets much more engagement. So I've got a Facebook business page with 37,000 followers. It gets very little engagement unless I boost. On my own personal page, which has professional mode switched on, I post to there, I get loads and loads of interaction and loads of engagement. And with professional mode on your Facebook page, on your Facebook personal profile, you can boost posts as well, and you can boost it for more organic reach. So I do that, and I actually get physical sales of books through my Facebook, because I can
So
track it and see it working.
it's not a business page. It's your own personal page. You're just turning it into I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so if you go onto your own personal page below your header on your Facebook, you'll see three little dots, and you click on those three little dots, and it'll say switch on professional mode. Professional mode is what they call for creative people, so like photographers, artists, authors, sculptors, people like that. And because we're our own business, it's all about us getting more followers and getting seen more for being who we are. But every single post you create, you can either make that post a public post or a friends only post. So if you put out something that's a little bit personal, then not everybody has to see it. But the other good thing, when you're posting content to Facebook on your personal profile, what will happen is a year's time, you'll get a notification about that post in your Facebook memories. So what you do is you go into your Facebook memories and go, oh, it's a free day. I'll just copy that, which I wrote out last year, and I'll repost it, especially if it's like a top tip. And I did two last week where I didn't physically have to write the post. I just copied it, read through it. Oh yeah, I'll add a little bit extra, update this, put new image, and it's done. Because remember that, a year ago, you probably had less followers. A year ago, if you had 2,000 followers, maybe only 500 of those followers saw the post in the first place. Now you've got 4,000 followers, so 2,000 never saw it in the first place, and because they weren't there, and another 1,500 never saw it because the algorithm never let them see it. So don't be afraid to repurpose your content. I would say every 6 months.
That's cool advice. I mean, I just as you were doing it, I went over there and I changed mine to the professional. So,
Yeah.
so with that, like this is just another question with that is, when you do that, can you have more followers? Because I know there's a limit to number of followers you can have as a personal page.
Yes, yeah. So you can have a lot more followers. I don't think there's a limit on the number of followers you can have. So, and I've seen a steady growth since I switched that on last year. But like I say, I'm also, what I do is I'll put a post up, And say, for instance, that post is talking about one of my books or something. It's a top tip, but I'll mention one of my books as well. Then what I'll do is I'll leave that for about 3 or 4 days to get some comments on and stuff from my community. Then I go over and I boost it, and I boost it for. I'll be lucky if I boost it for more than £6 or £7. Say $10 for 3 or 4 days. But that $10 might get me 10 book sales, and each book I might make $8 or $9. So it works. It definitely works. And it
I learned something new here today, Jeff, and I thought I knew a lot about Facebook.
yeah,
I knew more on the business side. I didn't know about this
yeah.
personal side of what was going on here.
It really gets. I mean, if you look down my own Facebook page, you'll see a lot of the interaction I get. It's and now it's more followers than family who comment on my personal stuff as well.
So can you, when you're boosting those posts on Facebook and stuff, and I didn't mean to go down this Facebook road, but you
Yeah,
opened up the door. But when you're boosting those Facebook, can you still target like what you're wanting to target? Like obviously for
yeah. So
you,
you
it's
can,
like
yeah,
for your
yeah.
book, you're
I've got,
targeting photographers or something like that, probably.
yes, I've got multiple audiences which I've created for
Okay.
that. The only thing that you can't, in order to boost a post, it has to be public. So you can't create a post and
Right.
just do
No, yeah,
friends
it's
only.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense. That makes sense. Well, no, so that's awesome. And so you guys all like, I mean, you've been with me for a while, like you're learning a little something new about Facebook and everything. And we've learned a little bit about LinkedIn. We could go down the LinkedIn road for forever and go into more and more details about that. But I do really want to focus more on the mindset things, especially with what you started and you have your book coming out right now,
yeah.
and everything. My question that I want to start with that I think you can have a lot of great insight in, and it's the $1 million question. I mean, I've talked to a lot of photographers. I've, kind of worked with photographers that are just kind of starting their business and stuff, just like I did 4 years ago. And you've worked with a lot of photographers. In your mind, this is the $1 million question. What is the number one thing photographers struggle with mindset wise? And what do you think is the way to overcome it?
So the definitely 100% is self-belief. It's that imposter syndrome, self-doubt. And you know what? Doesn't matter how good you are. I work with photographers. I was speaking to a photographer, so I'll not mention his name, speaking to a photographer last week who was suffering from self-doubt. This guy has one of the highest awards you can get in the photography industry in the
Wow.
UK. And that is UK and Europe. You know, he's absolutely amazing. But there's quite a lot of research gone into this, and for when I wrote the book, it said that potentially creatives are 20 times more likely to suffer from mental health illnesses and depression, self-doubt, imposter syndrome than people who go down the academic route. And the reason is we have a very, very close connection to what we do. And if things don't go our way, we believe it's because we're not good enough. When in reality, it could be our marketing isn't right, or we're not hitting the right target market, or that it's not us who are at fault. It's we got the wrong type of customer, the people who don't value what we do. But as soon as things don't start happening, we say, "Oh, we're not good enough photographers." Our photography is not good enough. Um, and it's getting that self belief and that visualization. And a lot of people, if you told me, I don't know, say back in 2013, 2014, that I should practice mindset and I should write a visualization statement and be grateful for what I do every single day. I'm ex-military, like when I had my my depression and my suicide attempt, typical guy. Oh, I don't need to go to the doctors. I'm going to try and sort out this all on my own. And anything that was along that mindset thing, I thought that's a load of rubbish. But then the more I got into it, and the more I understood it, and the more I read up on it, and the more I started to practice it, the more I was like, yeah, it makes total sense. And then when you start looking at other people who are really super successful, and you read their books, now I've listened to over 350 audiobooks on Amazon Audio. A lot of those are, biographies from rock stars, millionaires, billionaires, entrepreneurs, top people. you realize that all of these people, that there's nothing special about them at all. You know, the only all that's special about them, different about them between you and me, is that belief that they could get to where they were,
Hmm.
and their consistency in doing what they had to do to get them to where they wanted to be. You know, I mean, perfect example is Arnold Schwarzenegger's book. You know, he's Total Recall. You look at Sylvester Stallone's book, you know, about his self-belief in the Rocky script, you know, that he had to sell he physically had to sell his dog to be able to afford to eat, but he knew that the Rocky script was going to hit it off, and it happened. And people like Bear Grylls, who broke his back and was told he'd never walk again, but he didn't focus on that. He focused on, in his mind, he was going to get out of the hospital and go and climb Everest. And then 18 months later, he did. So it's all these amazing things, that it's that belief and that visualization, because what the mind believes, the body can achieve. And you're more like, if you believe in it yourself, you're more likely to take those positive actions to make this sort of stuff happen.
Yeah,
If you
and
don't believe it, it's not going to happen.
no, totally. And I would piggyback and I would ask the question on that is just like, what happens and how do you deal with, or how does a photographer deal with, like, I mean, I've gone through self-doubt and I've had a lot
Mhm.
of success in business, but I still go through it every now and then. I know like one of my big things is kind of like that visualization thing you talk about, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I learned a lot of this with Joel Dunn when I was talking to him and working with him for a while. And he's big in mindset as well, right? So um, what I is visualizing what the day is going to look like, right? And
yeah,
for
yeah.
me, it's like I can have a really bad sales day one day, but the next day I believe, hey, I've got 3 sales sessions today. My average sale is X amount of dollars. We're going to make $8,000 today or whatever, you know, but visualizing that that's how the day is going to go, right?
Mhm.
It's a, but it's a double-edged sword. You visualize that at, you know, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is. And
Yeah,
then by the end of the day, it's just like, no, another bad sales day, and
yeah.
now the self-doubt starts to come in.
Mhm.
Now the you know, whatever happens and all that stuff. How do you recommend somebody going and getting through those kind of things?
So one of the things I do is my visualization is like a bigger visualization. So I create like a visualization statement, which is my dream life and my dream scenario of where I want to be in my business. But also, you know, I will, and I talk as if it's already happened. So I'm saying, you know, I'm doing such and such, I'm doing this much money. I've now got 10 best-selling books. I'm number one on Amazon for this. This year I've had, you know, 8 amazing holidays. I've just got back from this. I'm currently driving this car. I've got this motorbike. You know, so everything that you dream, you write down in this visualization statement. And what I do is I type it out and read it back until I'm perfect with it, and then I record myself, so speaking it as if it's already happened. And I know this works because every 6 months I'll re-record my visualization statement. And the reason I have to re-record my visualization statement pretty much every 6 months is the amount of stuff that actually happens, that then I'm like, right, I'm going to do this now. You know, so I've got a new thing. You know, so I remember talking about being, you know, in my visualization, working closely with all the photography associations in the UK and being an ambassador for a big photographic um, yeah, camera manufacturer. I'm now president of the BIPP, the oldest professional photography association in the world. And I'm also a brand ambassador for Olympus Cameras. So those two things have been ticked off my visualization statement. Now, so every day is a step closer towards it. You don't have to get a single result every day. You just have to do something, you know, a post, writing 500 words towards my book, or doing something that's taking me in that right direction. But what helps me deal with negativity is the gratitude aspect, being grateful for something. And again, this is something that probably would have laughed at maybe back in 2014, said it was a little rubbish, but it is so powerful, like life-changingly powerful, because it has changed my mindset completely. I'm a much happier, um, positive person than I was 10 years ago. If I get a setback, I just like, oh, it's only a setback. Doesn't matter. What else have I got to be grateful for? I've got so much. And the gratitude aspect, I spend every morning, no more than 10 minutes of this every single morning, and I list three things that I'm grateful for in an order. And this is what my gratitude journal is all about. I talk about my gratitude for a person, my gratitude for a possession, and my gratitude for an experience. So that person might be saying, well, I'm really grateful for my mom. You know, at 83-year-old, my mom is amazing. She's still a Samaritan after being a Samaritan for over 20 years. She's inspirational. She helps other people in need, that sort of stuff. So I talk about my mom, and I just journal this down in a couple of sentences in my journal. The next thing I might talk about possession. I'm really grateful for my bean to cup coffee machine. I love it. You know, it's the best part of the day, having my first cup of coffee. And then I'll journal about an experience. Yeah, I really enjoyed my holiday to Lapland in 2014. You know, doing a husky safari. It was absolutely life changing, seeing the Northern Lights, blah, blah, blah. Now, you're never going to run out of stuff to be grateful for. It could be something simple like I'm grateful for my health. You know, I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for the frost on on a spider's web first thing in the morning. We've all got, it's just all these amazing things that we've got to be happy for. Now, if you think, so what, right? So the part of this is it's the physical, it's the chemistry behind the feeling of being grateful. It releases a load of stuff inside your body, right? And it lifts you up and it motivates you and it makes you feel good. Now, if you don't believe me, right, think about how you actually feel if you are ungrateful. So if somebody did something that you go, oh, the ungrateful sod, and you get annoyed with that, right? That instantly your positivity takes a nosedive. You feel really negative. You start thinking negative thoughts about this person. The dog gets in your way. You're like, oh God, I'm sick of the dog. And then negativity breeds negativity. Um, so and negativity leads to very low productivity. It leads to bad choices. You end up lying on the sofa, then you start eating unhealthy, and then you skip the gym, and it just escalates from there. So I think if you're in a constant mind of gratitude and happiness and positivity, how much that could do for your energy levels, your ability to cope with setbacks. And I wouldn't have believed this if I hadn't come back from trying to take my own life and losing over 120,000 and being 60 grand in debt back in 2015. And I had to rebuild my life. But now that failure is the best thing that's happened to me in about 20 years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like what I said early on when we were first starting is just like, sometimes the failure is the best lessons and best lessons learned, but you have to get past the
Mhm.
failure of it. Like I mean, for
Yeah.
me, I have alluded to this and I've said a little bit about this. But I had two studios, one in New York City and one here in Houston, which was my kind of flagship studio and everything. At the end of last year, I decided to close the New York studio. It just wasn't profitable enough for us to keep it going, and I learned that it was more of a pride thing that I wanted to keep it and everything. But
Yeah.
with that came with a lot of mindset of I failed. I didn't, did like it was a huge setback in my mind, right?
Mhm.
But it's like you said, I had to like look at the positives of what came out of that. Like, what did it
Yeah.
teach me that's going to make my studio that I have now better and stronger, which it has, and more profitable, and learning where to make cuts because I had to make hard cuts to those kind of things. But I think that's the hard part that we run into a lot of times, especially what I find it with creatives is like when they've tried different things. And the other side of it too is I would say, and you'd probably agree with this, people that try things, they want instant gratification, right? And so
Mhm.
like turn on a Facebook ad, booking sessions like that, like people think that that's like the magic pill, or post
Mhm.
something on LinkedIn and all of a sudden somebody's going to book a session with me. It doesn't always work that way, and you have to keep working at it. And then when
Mhm.
you keep falling back and it's like it's not working the way you intended or you mentally thought it was going to, it digs a deeper hole, and then it's harder to get out of that hole for some than it is for others, right? But
Totally.
it's finding those little things, like you would probably agree with this, is finding those little things and making them something bigger than most people would want them to be, that start building up into turning into like there's a lot more positive than there is negative in this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And everything.
I
And I
mean,
think
I mean,
that's
you just touched on their instant gratification, which we all want that now. Because we're in a society where if we have to wait for 3 days from something from Amazon, it's a chore. I want it tomorrow.
I should have it
I've
by the
paid
end of the
my
day. I ordered it at 8
yeah,
a.m.
yeah. Yeah. And then you get annoyed because you missed the DHL guy, and I've got to wait another 24 hours. This is ridiculous.
Right,
But
right.
the instant gratification that is taken care of by your morning gratitude, by writing this stuff down in your journal. And like I say, I ex-military, typical guy, I would have think this was all rubbish like 10 years ago. But when I write this down, I only write a couple of words because I don't want to take a lot of time doing it. But just by the process of writing, that gets that those feel good things flowing through my body, feel good chemicals. It lifts my mindset. It makes me really positive. But when I've wrote the first one, and the person that I'm grateful for, I stop, and I'm doing this on a morning while I'm having my coffee in a comfy chair. It takes me no more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes maximum. I have a drink in my coffee, and I just think about what I've wrote and conjure up a bit of a memory. And I might be sitting there, and then I start smiling because I remember something about that person, or I remember something about that experience, or I remember something about that possession. So that first, the time it takes me to drink that coffee, all that coffee has been filled with positivity, and that has a knock-on effect for the rest of the day. And it's like I said, it's allowed me to deal with so many setbacks and just go, oh well, something good will come along tomorrow. It's very, very seldom that I get um knocked back by anything. And I still have setbacks, I still have failures.
That's part of business,
Um
man. It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you're not
And this
like
it,
you're not doing it right if you're gonna have failures every now.
exactly, totally. And you think about it like and something I said in my book, that all these people who are totally successful, these billionaires, these actors and musicians, they all have and still are having failures.
Hmm.
Now, if everybody gave up at the first failure, most of those billionaires and millionaires wouldn't exist. Most of the high street, all the big brands that we know of in the world, a lot of those wouldn't exist because, James Dyson famously made 5,190 odd prototypes of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. If he'd given up on the first attempt, his company would fail to exist. So Dyson wouldn't be a part of the world. Thomas Edison, 10,000 attempts to do the light bulb. Then if he'd given up on the second attempt, and he wouldn't have created the light bulb, somebody else would have. But if you think about all these people who've had failures, if they'd given up straight away, all these brands, all these companies wouldn't be on the planet.
No, it's totally true. It's totally true. I mean, and I think, and I've always said this when it comes to business, it's like you can be a great photographer, you can be a good business person and all that stuff. It's just like, but if you don't have the right mindset, or you don't have you got to fight through some of that stuff sometimes,
Mm,
especially early on when you're first starting. And like you said, it's the instant gratification that we have to get away from because, there's too many things out there. It's like get rich now, and it's just like, and you
yeah.
and even people look at me. I'll be honest, like the people look at me and go, "Wow, look how fast he grew to whatever." But I had to work my ass off to get to that point. It wasn't like
Mm,
I just said, I said, "Hey, I'm going to start some Facebook." I had to work at it, and I think that's something that goes with the mindset. It's just like you have to think positive, you have to do positive things, but you have to work at it too. It's just not going to
yeah.
wake up
Yeah.
and you're like, snap. It's like, oh, all of a sudden you're going to have a
Yeah.
successful studio and a successful business, right? I think
I think on the
LinkedIn's a
counter
great
side of
example.
that.
Sorry,
Oh
go ahead.
yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I didn't have I didn't wake up one day and have 60 odd thousand followers. I grew. And like, there's that old, people talk about hustle and working so many hours and stuff. And then I say, yeah, I work hard, but I can be quite lazy as well. And
We all
and
are.
and look at and look at as many shortcuts as I can. And that's why I created a goal setting and a goal setting sort of book and program that I put together to keep people on track, because it's not going out and doing the big stuff, it's doing the small stuff and letting the small stuff add up that makes the big difference. It's not spending 8 hours, 10 hours a day doing your marketing. It's spending 1 hour a day consistently. You can't go to the gym and do a 3 hour session and you haven't been for like 6 months. You can't go to the gym, do a 3 hour session, go, chucking weights about, go totally on the treadmill and come out and then have a six pack and lose a stone. But if you go half an hour, 3 or 4 times a week, over time you'll start to see improvements. And that's the thing with your business. You identify what I call IGTs, which are income generating tasks. You identify the IGTs within your business, stuff that you do. And if you do this repeatedly, will ultimately lead to what you want to do, and I don't write a book overnight, and I don't look at even writing a book. What I do is I look at writing 500 words 4 to 5 times a week, because I make that easier. That's easier for my brain to cope with,
Right, right.
right? So and I don't look at growing X amount of followers on LinkedIn. I just look at growing X amount of followers per month and creating so many posts per month, 16 posts per month. So I give myself little hurdles to get over without overwhelming myself.
Yeah. Well, and it's starting somewhere. It's like you
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
you have to start somewhere and you have to take it one step at a time. And I think anybody that's done business in a while, like I think the hard part is we want to chew it all, like we want to fix everything right away because we think everything's broken. But if you got to find one thing that's a priority. I've told people this before when I first started my business. um, I was advertising black and white family photography. But if you went to my website, I had nothing but senior photography photos on it. And I was still booking sessions. But it's where
Yeah.
but what happens is people would say, I want to be a black and white photographer, just like John. And then they start advertising black and white photography. And then they like, I gotta update my website and I gotta make it all nice and pretty and all that stuff. And it's just like nobody cares.
Mhm.
Do something and make that something consistent,
Yeah.
and the rest you'll be able to work on over time. But I probably spent the first 3 or 4 months with no black and white family photos on my website. And nobody stopped booking because they went to my website and go, oh, I just see senior photos. What's this guy
Mm.
doing? Right. I,
Yeah.
I have a guy
Mhm.
that I work with. He's more of a wedding photographer and he's trying to get into the portrait side of thing, and he's slowly changing his website, but most of his website is weddings, but
Mhm.
people are still booking him. But it's where you're saying finding the places that do your priority and then stick with them and do them, as
Yeah.
opposed to, hey, I've got 20 things on my plate, I got to do all 20 today. You're not going to get all 20
Mhm.
done today. You got
Yeah.
to stick with like I think you said the IGTs, right?
Yeah.
And the things that are going to bring in income and generate clients, right? And then
Mhm.
the other side of it too is like, and I think this is part of the mindset is, I was just having a conversation with somebody about this at WPPI when I was there last 2 weeks ago, is when you're starting to build your business, go in with the mindset you're not going to make any money right away. Go in the mindset that every dime that you bring in, you're going to repurpose back into the business and not pay yourself for a few months until you finally get to
Mhm.
a place where you feel like you can start paying yourself. And I think that's a mindset thing because I think people, it's that instant gratification. Hey, I just made
Yeah.
$1,000 off of this client. Great. Go repurpose that $1,000 and
Mhm.
get 10 more clients at $100 a
Mhm.
person, right? And then
Yeah.
those 10 more clients are going to bring in $10,000, and then that out of that 10,000, you can start paying yourself a little bit. But it's breaking it off in little bits and chunks until you
Mhm.
get to the goal that you want to be. And it's not going to be like, hey, I got my $1,000 client and now I can pay myself $1,000. No, use that money to go and get your more clients and build your
Yeah.
business. It's a marathon, not a race. And it's
That's totally right. And funny enough, when I first started doing the mentoring side of things, I didn't have a website for 2 years because all my websites were photography related websites, and I was still doing weddings and stuff. I had a guy do a website, and it was horrendous, so I never used it. But I'd bought the domain name. But I thought, what, I'm just going to start creating content on LinkedIn, because even if that website had gone live, right, that guy had created and it had been slightly better, it probably wouldn't start generating customers because it's got to be found first. So just because a website's up online, it doesn't mean it's going to show up in Google search results. Whereby connecting with the right people and putting myself on LinkedIn, I was getting into people's newsfeed straight away and getting seen.
Mhm.
And nobody ever said, "Oh, Jeff, I've went to have a look and you haven't got a website. I'm not booking you." Yeah, but it was because my content was valuable. I was putting myself out there. People connected with me, the person, and it's better to connect with me than it is to connect with a website because you can't ask a website a question,
Right.
So, but you can ask me a question.
Right. 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 So I don't, I mean, we've had a couple of people popping in and out of this as we've been doing it live for the first time. First of all, Richard Wayne came on and said, "You're a fantastic," which I would agree with him 100%. Richard's a
Oh, thank you.
fantastic human being as well. And then Robert Thomas came on and he had to leave because he was doing some editing and stuff, but he did have a question, and I'll lead this to as we close up. But when is the book? When is the book for LinkedIn, the new one, version 4? When are you hoping to have it
I'm
finalizing
probably
out?
going to, yeah, probably going to be, probably have most of the content done by the end of this month, beginning of next month. And then it just depends on how quick I can get my designer to put it all together. Um, and I like to keep updating these books every couple of years because I like to have as much valuable content in there as possible. So yeah, I would say probably mid to end of April,
Okay.
it should be there.
And
Yeah.
where can they, where, if somebody wants to get one of your books, where could they find that?
So if they go to Amazon and just look for Jeff Brown, Jeff Brown, the photographer's mentor, or the photographer's mentor on Amazon. But if you look at the photographer's missing link, the ambitious photographer's journal, and the new book that I just put out today is called the photographer's gratitude and mindset journal.
Okay. And when we post this, we'll put these in the show notes. We'll put links to the books in the show notes, and we always do a blog entry for every one of the posts. We're doing this live today, but it's actually the podcast will go live probably in a week
Yeah.
or so. But we'll put these things in the show notes. The other thing is, where can people find you if they want to like work with you and do some mindset coaching and get going in the right direction with their business?
So they can find my website at thephotographersmentor.com. And on top of that, you can go to LinkedIn and just type in Jeff Brown, the photographer's mentor. Drop me a connection. If you do have any questions, feel free to just connect with me and then ask me a question. And I always reply to everybody's questions with a little voice clip. And I am genuinely
Jeff
here
is
to help
definitely the
anyway.
master of the voice clip.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I only work with so many photographers anyway, but it's always been my mission that, because I can't work with everybody, that I will, give as much information away as I can for free. That's one of the part of writing these books. It's about, if people can't afford to come on my program or I'm fully booked up, at least people can go and buy one of my books and then get some more stuff, or they can come to my LinkedIn and see some of my posts, or they can even ask me a question. Because at the end of the day, I'm a photographer too, and I want everybody to succeed. It's an industry that is massively undercharging on so many levels.
Right.
A lot of photographers are so creative, so talented. Some photographers have more talent in their little finger than I have in my entire body, yet they're not charging what they should be. And it's these guys who want to educate, because buying a new camera, buying a new satellite isn't going to make you any more money, but getting your marketing and your branding right and your
In your
consistency
mind.
is going to be is in your mind. Yeah, yeah. And your belief in yourself, that's what's going to be the game changer, and that's going to turn things around for you.
No, that's awesome. Well, Jeff, it has been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Every time you and I have had like little chats over the years, I've always gotten a couple of gold nuggets that I've taken with me and used within business and all that stuff. And this is no different, just having a podcast meet up with you. So I appreciate you for taking the time and meeting with you again. I'm sure we'll have to cross paths again when maybe the next LinkedIn book, we can dive into that a little bit more and all that
Brilliant.
stuff.
Yeah,
So
I'd love to. I'd
I
love to.
appreciate you coming on, and you get to bed. It's what time is it there? It's getting kind of
Oh,
late for you.
it's just 8 o'clock, so I've got to take the
Oh, it's
dog
not
out
too
and
late.
then
Okay, I thought it was a little later there.
yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Take the dog out and then I probably will have an early bed. So
There you go. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much. I appreciate you so much, and thanks a lot for being a part of the podcast today.
my pleasure. Thanks again, John, and
No
take care,
problem.
everyone.
All right. Cool. That was awesome. We